Welcome to Auntie Talks and Listens, where I talk to everybody about a lot of things. Today, my guest is millennial Nate or Tijion Jones, depending on how long you've known him, if you're family, if you're business, if you're foe. To me, he's Tijion. Hey, Ty, how are you?
Hey, how are you? It's nice to join your podcast. I've been an avid listener for these first two episodes that have dropped so far.
Appreciate it, honey. And hey, can you just introduce yourself to the folks? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I am a Los Angeles native. I know you introduced me as a millennial. Yes, I am born the first year of millennials, but I'm here to tell you, I have a lot of Gen X in me. If you had a rotary phone in your house at any point when when you were alive, you might be closer to Gen X than millennial. Um, professionally, people know me in the sports business. I've worked at a sports agency, Goodwin Sports, for the last 14, 15 NBA seasons. I can't keep up with it. Basically, manage NBA players and their off the court business and brand deals and things of that nature. I've been dealing with that for a long time. Out of that, I started a new business and during the pandemic. Um, that's a athletic insole performance company that I've been building up, and we've been live for 2 years, and it's been a fun journey. Did I mention I'm from LA, born and raised,
You
and
did.
and Tracy is my godmother.
Woohoo!
So yeah,
My firstborn, I say, although I didn't actually birth him, but he has been in my life since before he was actually born, and I'm not gonna lie, I am so fond of you and so biased about everything you do to the point where, at one point, your god sister said to me, "You know, he didn't invent the internet, right?" It's like,
yeah,
close enough, though.
yeah,
And you also are a husband. Am I right
yes,
about that? Yep.
yeah. So, oh man, better not forget that part. Yeah, I've been
Yeah,
married
better
for
not.
Yeah, I've been married for 5 years to my lovely wife, Wendy. She is a Midwest native, so I've got a little, expansion of family beyond my LA base, but it's been awesome.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, so as you mentioned, this is going to be our third episode. The first two episodes, we talked about kind of different subjects. The first one we talked about are men and women at war with each other, which was extremely controversial. And some people, when I first said I wanted to talk about that subject, said I was delusional and that this wasn't happening. As you and I both know, it's actually more broad spread than I even thought. I thought it was a music, an Instagram thing, a US thing, and we will be having a second episode because as you have shared things with me, I realize now that it is not just in the US, but worldwide, and that it potentially will have an impact on our upcoming elections. So definitely want to talk about it more. And then the second episode was more of a love story, which I really, really enjoyed. And I had on longtime friend Beverly Lofton, wife of 2003 NFL Hall of Famer, where she talked about their 43 years of marriage. So I say all this to say, listeners, if you have not caught up on those episodes, please do so by typing in Auntie Talks and Listens on your podcast applications, or you can watch us on YouTube for both of us. But
Awesome.
today, in honor of Black History Month and the importance of education to our people, I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of educating our youth in predominantly white institutions, and particularly Black males, because I do think it is a bit of a different experience for males versus females. And obviously, Ty, I thought about you. You have expanded the gamut of this between having gone to Beverly Hills High School, which currently has a African American population of 5%, then going to USC grad school, undergrad, which has a 6% Black population, and then finishing off at UCLA Law School with a 5% current Black population. All extremely prestigious. And I was bragging the whole time about all of it, right? And continue
Yeah.
to about you.
Thank you.
I'm not known for being modest about the kids. I will say that Auntie definitely will bring out all the accolades.
You're
But
always
as I said,
everyone's
both
number
or all
one.
three extremely prestigious.
Sorry, I said you're always everyone's number one supporter. So that's not a surprise. Number one cheerleader for
Yeah,
sure.
well, hey, I mean, I give it where it's due, right? And I
Yeah.
do. Yeah, I have so much respect and am so proud of what you've been able to do professionally. And with your personal life, having such a lovely wife. But I say all this to say though, because none of those schools are known for their diversity, although extremely prestigious. So I just kind of want to jump in and talk about, the why you were sent to or chose those schools, what your experience was, and ultimately, would you do the same if you had kids? Would you put them in schools that were
All
predominantly white?
all good questions for sure. 100%. And I would say, for me, let's start it off with, where I was raised for the most part, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that foundation kind of determines how this stuff impacts you. So I
Mm-hmm.
was born I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but I grew up basically lived in the same house my entire life. My family's owned our house for going on 40 years, and grew up in the mid city area of Los Angeles. For the neighborhood when I grew up there, obviously there's been changes all across LA. Was majority Black and Latino working class people, and
Mm-hmm.
LA in the 80s, you used to be able to be working class and purchase a home.
Yeah,
So
not anymore. Yeah.
yeah. So the properties that my family still has, the
Mm-hmm.
duplex I grew up in, the quadplex I live in now, were all through working class money buying these places, right? But I grew up in that neighborhood, and the foundation of that was working class, Black, Latino. I did not know, like, really did, outside of a few teachers, because teachers in my neighborhood, at my neighborhood elementary school, I didn't really know like white people like that. Like they just
Mm-hmm.
weren't a part of my life and a part of my existence. So that was the foundation of where I've been, foundation of family life, everything else, and what I knew, and really deeply, like, my entire existence was Black working class. So to go from that to, I know you mentioned Beverly Hills High School, but I didn't start off in Beverly Hills High School for my
Mm-hmm.
first experience of transferring. I went to a school called Wilshire Crest in La Brea and Olympic. Again,
Mm-hmm.
majority Black
Mm-hmm.
students, Latino, some Korean and Chinese students mixed in, but for the most part, it was that was the experience. Working class for the most part. Transferred in the middle of sixth grade to a school on the north side of Beverly Hills. North side of Beverly Hills is the Beverly Hills that everybody thinks of in
Mm-hmm.
movies and all of that.
90210.
90210,
Mm-hmm.
that is the wealthiest part of Beverly Hills. It was a school called Hawthorne, which is a K
Mm-hmm.
through 8 school. The
Mm-hmm.
middle school starts in sixth grade. In
Mm-hmm.
LA, again, aging myself, in the 80s and 90s, elementary school went to sixth grade. So
That's right.
I transferred in the middle of sixth grade and went from an experience of, nothing but um, Black students, Latino students, working class, all of that, and most of my teachers, pretty much all of my teachers, Black, to going to an institution where that changed, and the socioeconomic backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds, everything was different, and it was middle school, so it was just a complete shock to the system. So Yeah, so I was in sixth grade when I transferred, in the middle of sixth grade. So this is my sixth grade year was 92, 93.
Okay. Okay.
So Christmas holiday happens, and then just they kind of drop on me that I'm going to transfer. And the context of this is my grandmother. Um, I grew up in a house in a duplex with my grandmother, my great grandmother, and my mom. That's who raised me.
Multi-generational living.
Multi-generational living. Technically my grandmother owned was upstairs in her unit, and
Yeah.
my mom was downstairs, but we treated it as like the same thing. I actually lived
Yeah.
upstairs with my grandmother, all
Yep.
of that. Well, she worked for Beverly Hills schools for 25 years. She was a manager
Yeah.
in the cafeteria, right?
Yep.
So that was how I got access to this, and they decided this was time. I guess this was a plan that was going to happen. They had planned for years, but they just didn't want to start us out in those schools. My mom and my uncle had actually transferred in after my grandmother first started her gig there.
Yeah.
So they finished their middle school and high school. They did the same thing. So it just kind of got dropped on me in the holiday that I was transferring. I'm thinking I didn't even say goodbye to my friends. I thought I
Wow.
was coming back. I thought
Wow.
I was coming. Yeah, I thought I was coming
Oh
back.
man. Um, Not only are you not having the opportunity to say goodbye to your friends, but you're going to a school probably where you know no one, right? And people don't look like you. People don't have the same life experiences as you. They don't live in your neighborhood. So that means, in terms of all the socialization that happens after school, is also compromised. And so, what are you thinking in terms of, well, this is extremely different? Are you feeling like you need to behave differently? Are you feeling, do you know how to get support?
Yeah, it definitely was a complete shock to the system for a number of reasons. Number one, just the uh, the backgrounds of everyone. They didn't come from the same place as me. And it's funny, I was 20, everything in LA is 15, 20 minutes away. It took me 25 minutes in traffic to get to school every day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you talk to them, they thought I was from another world. Like, where do you
Absolutely.
live? How far away is that? Where is
Yeah.
like La Brea? Like that's crazy. Like that's
Yeah.
that's far
Yeah, which
away.
is the center of the city as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
And anyone who does not know where La Brea is, in my mind, like, you
they're in a
can't be
bubble.
from LA in my mind, right? But just
Yeah,
total different experience.
you're in a bubble, and so there's that experience of it. There's the religious aspect of it. I went to a Methodist church, and my grandmother and
Yeah.
great grandma made sure we were going to church
Yeah.
on most Sundays. I'd be able to get
Holman
out of it. So
Methodist Church
yes,
for
home and Methodist.
anybody out there who knows.
Yeah, so home and Methodist church. So I was pretty consistent with that as a kid, and involved in extracurriculars and all that stuff. And then the majority of my school that I transferred into was Jewish, and
Right.
I didn't know what Jewish, I
Right.
didn't know any of this stuff. So this is the first time experiencing that. Then
Right.
you get into the differences in economics and uh, wealth and income and all that stuff, and it's a different world. When I tell you that I had sixth grade classmates that had drivers, I mean,
Yeah.
like their parents were busy
Yeah.
working and doing
Yeah.
whatever, and they had a person that was assigned to them and a car that was assigned to them that
Yeah.
picked them up and took them where they needed to go. So that was a whole different. It's a shell shock situation.
Yeah. So a couple things I would ask you about, both the elementary and high school
Hmm.
situation. Did you feel did you feel supported though by the teachers? Did you feel seen?
Well, I think that there's a few things on that. I think some teachers were great, and I have a math teacher from that middle school experience, Mr. Fitch, that was awesome. Like
Hmm.
from day one. The hardest thing for me was in my school in LA, in my neighborhood, they thought I was the smart, curious kid, right? And
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
and within my
Mhm.
family, within the neighborhood, like that's always kind
Mhm.
of how I'd been labeled.
Mhm.
um, you get moved into another situation. They were way ahead of us,
Mhm.
just being frank.
Mhm.
So when I started in the middle of sixth grade and I came in and I just felt like I got hit with like a storm, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
And this is the first time my identity had been challenged, not
Mhm.
just, the neighborhood and world that I came from, but just the idea that I wasn't as smart as I thought or I had been told
Mhm.
that I was.
Mhm.
I had some teachers that were awesome in terms of like patience and trying to help me get
Mhm.
to where I needed to be and could see the spark in me and interest.
Mhm.
And then um, there were some that were just like, oh my gosh, like, he's a permit kid kind of thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I got to deal with, catching
Mhm.
him up and
Mhm.
whatever else. But I always say that those challenges, like getting knocked down the way that I did, especially academically, is the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. Did your mom know though? Did your grandma know
Oh
that you were
yeah,
feeling challenged?
for sure. They made me go to summer school that's that summer because I did. This was the first
Okay.
time because I was struggling in the classroom, and I was
Okay.
really upset because I wanted to be home with my friends in my neighborhood the whole summer. So
Wow.
then again, my neighborhood was my identity. What our neighborhood was like. If you would bring Tiffany over, we would have a million kids around. Like we always had something going on. Always had
Absolutely.
friends in that neighborhood, and some of them I'm still friends with to this day. And I'm
Yeah.
grateful. I'm grateful for that. But when I transferred, it made me like I would just wanted to. It made me very very grateful for even more grateful for the neighborhood, and I wanted to spend my whole
Wow.
summer with my friends. And yeah, obviously that was a that was taken away from me a little bit. So it was just like, you're being shaken up a bit.
Yeah. And so let me also clarify something you said earlier. You said some of the teachers were really great and were
Hmm.
were putting in the work to help you get where you needed to be, and then
Hmm.
some of them just saw you as a permit kid. And for people who don't know what a permit kid is, it means that you've gotten a permit to attend a school that is outside of your normal home school, your normal district. And typically kids are attending on permits these schools that are not predominantly black because they have better resources, and their parents are trying to place them in these schools that have better resources, but also not always being conscious. I would think more so now, but not back when you guys were kids, maybe being as conscious about the challenges that were going to go along with that, such as oh my god, my smart kid is going to be air quotes behind now because these kids have had experiences, opportunities, resources that kids just don't get in the predominantly minority schools. And so it sounds like though your mom and grandma realized that, put you in summer school, and helped you to do the things you needed to do to get on pace with everybody else. But I wonder. So you also mentioned, and I can I can actually hear the sounds of you guys playing in the summertime, the
Yeah.
noise, the ruckus,
Yeah.
the fun, that you had to miss out on that year.
Yeah.
And so I also wonder though, um, did you ever at any point feel like an outsider in your own neighborhood?
Yeah. I mean, definitely because you start, I was already the weird kid anyway to begin with. And now I'm like, God, I'm you're just you're in and out of that situation, and then you don't know what's going on at school. And my friends all
Yeah,
transferred to, excuse me, they all went on to middle school at John Burroughs, and
yeah,
like I'm hearing
yeah.
about that and whatever else. and you're just not in the mix the same way that you were before, which is,
Yeah.
that's I again I will say this over and over again. This is the best thing in terms of my progress as the adult that I am today. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. The challenges
Yeah.
around this, best thing that ever happened to me.
But I would have to say to that, Ty, you're wired a particular way. And here's
Mm,
why I say that. You had no home. You weren't
yeah.
home in your neighborhood and you weren't home in your schools, right? You
Mm-hmm.
were, while I get that all those things build character,
Yeah.
um, and teach you how to operate in places where folks may not be used to people like you, where you may not have the best buddy, in your environment. It teaches you how to be able to uh, survive and thrive in those situations. But I can't imagine it wasn't hard for you as a kid not having your place anymore. You were sort of displaced.
De- Definitely, and it's interesting. So like I got a good feel for. I was very protective of my house, my family, my neighborhood. So like I don't think all through middle school I didn't have one friend come over, not once from school.
Wow.
Um, and it wasn't because I couldn't have gotten people to do it. I just didn't want to be the uh like case study, like, oh man, I went over his
Yeah.
place and this is this and
Right.
like I didn't
Right.
want to be that. So I like, whereas my brother, he wanted he was our brother that is 18 months younger than me, and he was bringing, everybody, anyone he could get to sleep over, stay over, anything like that. we and I did not. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not
Yeah.
having that. And I don't think I actually um I didn't start doing that until my 8th grade year. I connected with a I started becoming good friends with someone that was like inviting me to stay over, to
Wow.
hang
Yeah.
out and do whatever. But
Yeah.
before that, it was just very much like, I'm at school, this is what happens at school, and then I go home. And my
Well, it's
world at
almost like you
home
had a
is different.
job. It's like you had
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's two different competing worlds that like don't fully understand each other at all.
Hmm. And now let me ask you this. So when you got to high school, though, do you feel like that leveled out because you probably some of the same kids that went to junior high, middle school with you, went to high school with you? So did you feel like that leveled out in terms of you had a group that was your core group? You were doing the things that kids do, spending the night over their house, they were spending the night over your house. Did that level out, or did it kind of always?
Yeah, I would say the high school experience, Beverly Hills high school experience was different because
Mm-hmm.
now there's even more permit kids that come in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the
Yeah.
sports teams. I was an athlete and
Yeah.
played, sports all 4 years.
Yeah.
Um, and you also have kids coming from all four schools. So like if there was, you know, two black kids in my grade, including me at Hawthorne, maybe there were four at, whatever
Woo!
school. And then so now you're at least see something, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you
Yeah.
have the more expansive look with the permits and all that stuff, right? So that was a different it still was, you know, not to the level I would have experienced if I stayed in my own neighborhood, but it was not close to this. Like Hawthorne is like wealthy, and like I was one of two
Right. Wow. Wow.
in my grade.
Yeah. That's a lot for a little person.
I was gonna say, I honestly think if it wasn't for I think the socioeconomic issues made it just like that much more glaring. If it wasn't for those differences, wouldn't have been, as if we
Yeah.
were all on the same level and that, like, it wouldn't have
Yeah.
been that, but it was all of it. Like I was really getting to see you see the class differences. You see
Right.
the class differences, the things that people talk about, the problems that people have in their lives, all that stuff is just,
Right. I mean,
you get to see it full on.
I would imagine, or I know for a fact, when you start talking about like what you're going to do on spring break, you're going to go to Magic Mountain. They're
Yeah.
going to Spain. You know what I mean? It's just a very different experience. And it's a lot for a young person, I think, to figure out how to navigate. But what about dating when you got to high school? How was that?
Oh man, here we go. Man, that's the other thing is like, you know, I my early preteens, teens, all of that stuff. I wasn't around like black girls at all,
Right.
right? So I like what everybody was attracted to or talking about or whatever, who was the most popular, all that. Like, so that mindset changed, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
so like I got to high school and I was open to any and everything, right?
Right.
And it was because I had been, you know, I don't know if this is the right word, but indoctrinated into like that
Mhm.
environment and
Mhm.
what was seen as attractive and what was
Mhm.
cool and what was whatever.
Mhm.
So that was that. I honestly was like a little late to dating. My first girlfriend was my first girlfriend was Jewish,
Mhm.
and there were some problems that came out of that. And
Mhm.
I've had that a couple of times, a handful of times in my life, experiencing
Yeah.
that because they just see me as me, and I see them as
Mhm.
them, and then their parents and their generation. And it's not necessarily. I think within that group, it's more about like I definitely think you know the socioeconomic aspect, and then they're very insular in terms of you're
Mhm.
going to marry your own folks and all that
Mhm.
stuff. So
Mhm.
I was colliding with that a little bit, but I didn't
Mhm.
know anything different. I mean, I tell people all the time. My business partner um, in my startup now, he's an Orthodox Jew,
Mhm.
and they he jokes around. He's like, "You just know everything. Like you are so comfortable with my holidays and my religion and
Yeah.
this and whatever else, and it's not like it's not a big deal to me. None of it. And
Right.
it's because I'm like, dude, I probably went to dozens of bar
Sta
mitzvahs, bar
State of
mitzvahs,
different
went
dinners.
yeah,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
this stuff that I had gone to and experienced. So that was just second nature to me at that point.
Yeah, well, I have to say, one of the things I would say to parents who are going to send their children into schools that are predominantly anything, um, standards of beauty are going to be established,
Hmm.
right? And I think, um, I know in the Black community that can feel very hard, especially for males, when you feel like your son is only dating other than
Hmm.
Black women. And, what I've said to my friends who have been in these situations, and to, all the folks your age that are in my life, is that people are choosing from the pool that is available to them.
Yes.
And their standards of beauty are being established by what is the norm and whatever that population pool is. And it's not about rejecting other, it's about this is who's available. And I'm hearing over and over that that is what pretty is. And who doesn't want what pretty is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say like for me, I always think of like the sixth grade year that I had this crush on this girl for like forever at my elementary
Uh,
school, and we like she was a black girl that I like, just that's what I knew, and that's what
yeah.
was around me. Whereas because outside of people that lived in my neighborhood, because it was basically I went to school, I went to church, and church, we started to fall off more as we got into middle school and activities and stuff around that. And I was in my neighborhood. So it was basically like, now that I think about it, there weren't really that many. We had a lot of boys in our neighborhood. There weren't really
You did. Yeah.
we had a lot of boys, at least my age. We had a
Yeah.
lot of boys. Um, so in my neighborhood, there weren't really a lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
In When I would go to school, there would be, because it was the broader neighborhood. But I'm talking about just like the 5 to 10 block radius
Right.
around my space.
Mm-hmm.
And then at school, it was a completely different race, religion, socioeconomic background. So that was it. But
Mm-hmm.
before then, when I was in elementary school, like
Yeah.
this girl's name was actually Tiffany too. Like
Oh,
that was
wow.
a black girl named Tiffany. That was who I had a crush on before I transferred schools, right? Um, so it's just time and place and experience and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also would say the whole socioeconomic thing can become an issue. It also can become an issue in terms of religion, culture, upbringing, and there being rejection of the unknown, um, and rejection of I want to protect and keep things the same, um, in terms of parents. So I do think I want to hope those things are getting better. I tend to try to be on the optimistic side.
Hmm.
I want to hope they're getting better. Um, so yeah. Okay, so that was basically middle school, high school.
Hmm.
And then you go to San Diego State,
Yes.
then USC, and then
Yes.
UCLA. So those are chosen by you. And neither of those having being known for diversity. I think San Diego State definitely had a higher black population. I know they do.
Hmm.
But neither of those being known for having particularly diverse uh, populations. I am assuming you chose those because of their prestige and resources.
So, be fully transparent with you. So my this is the these are the these are the benefits of some of the negatives. So my
Hmm.
first girlfriend in high school, I was still struggling. Like, it took me, probably until the middle of high school where I finally got my stride academically. And part of
Hmm.
it was my first girlfriend she was she was a bookworm and serious. Like, I'm like, anything less than an A is unacceptable. So I kind of turned up the volume trying to keep up with her a little bit, right? And figured out how to manage everything. Because for me, it was a lot of times it wasn't a curiosity thing; it was a time management thing. Like, how do you
Hmm.
manage everything? And I started to see the work that she would put in and how much work she would do and all that stuff. So I started to
Hmm.
get myself together academically. Um, Probably like middle of high school, towards the end of my sophomore year. But as you know, like, that sophomore year is important for your college admissions and all that stuff. I did
Absolutely.
well in the SAT, but
Hmm.
I wanted to go to USC. I didn't get into USC out of undergrad. So I
Hmm.
was just like, am I going to stay at home and go to community college, because that's what a lot of the Beverly kids that didn't get to their first choice or where they wanted to go, it's basically a feeder right into UCLA, USC. I needed to get out of my house. Like,
Hmm.
I had
Yeah.
those three women kind of like super overprotective of me my entire life, and a bunch of other stuff going on. So I needed to experience being on my own.
Hmm.
And staying in a state school, California, only 2 hours away, was easy. But the entire time I was there, my focus was on transferring to USC. So basically, I had set a goal. That's where I wanted to go to school. This is where I'm going to be. I'm going to figure it out. So
Hmm.
that's why I went to San Diego State. And when I
Hmm.
think about the experience there, a lot of people that were in school there were in school because their parents said, you got to go to college.
It was
And a lot of
close.
them and a lot of them were not ready for college. Put it
Yeah.
that way,
Mhm.
right? So
Mhm.
I was there like just knocking out my work. I had 8 a.m.
Mhm.
classes. All like I was serious. Like I'm this is a
Once again, you were
stopover.
on a job. You were on a job
Yeah,
once again.
yeah.
Mhm.
So this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to get out of there.
Mhm.
Um, so I was there for 2 years.
So tell me though why SC was important to you.
Um, I just had started doing research on their business school and alumni network and all that stuff as a high schooler, and that's what attracted me to it. And I
Mhm.
just was like, UCLA didn't have an undergrad business school,
Mhm.
and I wanted to do that. Like I kind of had my plan of what I wanted to do, and that
Mhm.
was it. And when I didn't get in, I remember I was so upset, but I was just like, all right, I can do this. I can, um,
Mhm.
I can go somewhere else that allows me to get away from home,
Mhm.
buckle down, get the grades I need to get, and transfer. And that's what
Mhm.
ended up happening.
Mhm. And did you now obviously SC private institution,
Hmm.
also lots of money there in
Hmm.
terms of kids who are going there. Did you at this point, I'm going to assume that you had learned to navigate all those kinds of things. That I'm I'm one of very few. I can hang with anybody. It's about I'm here for a job. I'm assuming that was the attitude.
Well, it's changed a little bit because so that this is the thing about relationships, networks, all that stuff. When you go into different worlds,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my friends from the Beverly Hills, run from 6th grade to 12th grade ended up transferring to either were in at USC,
Yeah,
transferred to USC, all of that stuff.
yeah.
So I had a mix of friends from all different grades, because I had friends that were younger than me that they were starting their
Mm-hmm.
freshman year when I
Mm-hmm.
was transferring in, or they were already there as sophomores and juniors, um, or they were transferring in from Santa Monica College. So
Mm-hmm.
two of my friends from high school, one I played basketball with is in my entire 4 years, and another one that I had been close with for 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
and became closer in college. We were all, and a few other folks. They all transferred in, so I had that base of people. But you know, I didn't do. And when I tell you, like, I'm trying to think and remember if there was anyone that, like, my friend group at SC was not black. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was not, a lot of times people like our folks get into a situation like that and we're trying to find people that look like us or whatever. I was able to just lean on the network and friend group that I already had. So I was becoming friends with friends that they knew or connections through that, or, it was just more of that versus being kind of like I wasn't really isolated there. The thing that
Mm-hmm.
sucked about SC is um, I was working a lot of hours while I was at SC, so I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really in the social environment outside of going to
Mm-hmm.
um, football games is a big deal at SC, and go to some
Mm-hmm.
basketball games and things of that nature. But other than that, I really wasn't in the social scene like that. But yeah, my friend group was basically not a lot of new people. It was just people that carried over from the Beverly Hills experience.
So I feel like I'm hearing something. So let me I want to backtrack on a couple of things. First of all,
Hmm.
for anybody listening who does not know this, Ty talked about the um being not as academically advanced as the students were at these other schools when he transferred from a predominantly black institution. And I want to say, my guess with that would be schools are much more overcrowded in terms of teacher to
Yes.
student ratio. Public schools in the US are typically funded through property taxes. And
Yes.
so when you live in areas where the properties may not have the same value or as high a value, that means that your schools are not going to have the same resources as those schools that are in higher socioeconomic areas. And I just have to put this out there that this becomes how shall I say, a trickle down effect. And that, you've got kids who are bright, who are curious, very much like Ty was and is, but they just don't have the same access, not for lack of trying, not for lack of parental engagement, but just because the money isn't there. And so when we think about things like affirmative action and this feeling that everybody should be able to make it on their own merit, you have to start with a level playing field. And these kids in these neighborhoods that are lower socioeconomic, they are not being given the same opportunity from the very beginning. And so to snatch up the ladder when it's time to go to college is extremely unfair, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the thing I would say, number one, like I always tell people, I didn't live in a bad neighborhood.
Not at all.
Like
You lived in a
I
great neighborhood.
lived in a great. It just was working class. Like
Yes.
I wasn't scared of like drive-bys and gang violence.
Not at
Like I
all.
wasn't. What that's not
No.
what I experienced at all. And I don't when I look back at my Wilshire Crest experience, I don't think of it as like a bad experience.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
think it just wasn't the standard, and the access and the money and everything else
Mm-hmm.
that I experienced when I got to go to Beverly Hills Unified Schools. It's just a different level. It's just a different playing field, and
Yeah.
I had some good. I'll give you one example. Um, at Wilshire Crest, there was one computer lab, and I don't know when these computers were made, but they were Atari based computers. They were like Atari DOS based computers. So
Mm-hmm.
um, the teacher for basically the woman that had been in charge of this lab, her main class, we would like kind of um, alternate groups, like maybe like once a week, so that other kids could experience having in her class. But I was in her fifth grade class,
Mm-hmm.
and um, like the kids just hadn't had access to computers. They didn't know, they
Yeah.
weren't familiar with it, whatever. I was like very interested in computers when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
even though I didn't even have one at
Mm-hmm.
the house at that time. My mom and family got me a Mac Classic for Christmas, fifth
Mm-hmm.
grade. So
Mm-hmm.
I saw the students struggling, and I wrote up a whole like manual for the kids at the school to experience, like learn how to
Mm-hmm.
use it, do whatever. And the teacher thought like she was just like
Mark
blown
Zuckerberg.
away.
Mark
Yeah,
Zuckerberg. Right.
she
Yeah. Yeah.
she thought I was this like amazing, brilliant, whatever. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what's being poured into me, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
telling me all this stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
I transfer, not even
Yeah.
a year later, I'm at a completely different world. And the whole, they've got multiple
And you're
computer
remedial.
labs with,
You're remedial, pretty much.
yes, remedial, and
Mm-hmm.
they've got multiple computer labs. Every kid in the
Mm-hmm.
school's got a computer at home. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just different. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
different experience.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to call that out because, we know the challenges with affirmative action now. And um, I'm all about uh, a meritocracy, but at the same time, I think we have to make sure that people are on a level playing field. And we do not have that currently. And I'm not talking about it from 25 years ago, as you say, when you were much younger. I'm talking about today. It is still a problem. It's still a problem today in that I think there was a study done in 2019 by Ed Bill, and our schools are still very segregated. 75% of our schools are white, or the population is white. Our kids are attending schools that are either 75% white or 75% non-white. which tells you that they are going to segregated schools. And those segregated schools that are the non-white schools, I guarantee you that those schools do not have the computer lab you're talking about. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I would highly encourage us to look at ways that we can improve these schools that are outside of property taxes. Um, yeah.
You know what's
So,
interesting? What's interesting that I've been hearing about and seeing, and I mean, I don't know enough details about it, but what I've been hearing about you're starting to see neighborhoods like Beverly Hills become even more like prestige focused. So even though to an average
mhm,
person in LA, Beverly Hills schools are
mhm,
awesome, to them, they're like
mhm,
not good enough, right? Like so now
yep.
there's the competition to, even though they have these this property tax funded um, public schools that are awesome, and a
Mhm,
lot of parents and kids in LA would love to be able to go to those schools for free. They're
mhm,
trying to send their kids to private schools and
absolutely.
spend the money to you know, have that prestige attached to it. The Beverly
Mhm,
Hills Unified is not prestigious enough for them,
mhm,
despite all of the um,
absolutely.
success of a lot of the
Absolutely.
kids that have come through that school district. So it's just like the levels are getting, especially if you're trying to get to that, because when you're talking about those levels, those kids go to, you know, either high UCs if they're in California, or they're going to Ivy Leagues or Stanfords and things of that nature. So um, that's a weird, like, it's almost like the rich getting richer, and then, you know, the distance between what you're able to experience in
The
certain
divide is
neighborhoods versus.
growing.
Yeah.
Right. Right. We know the divide is growing for sure, economically, and you know, people with access are always going to try to. We all want to provide the best for our kids, which is what your mom and your grandma did for you. They provided the best that they could provide, which was to make you a permit kid at Beverly Hills High School, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you are a resident of Beverly Hills and you have that kind of wealth and you're in LA, you're probably going to send your kid to Harvard Westlake, if you know what I
Yes.
mean. You're going to buy that private school education, and
Yes.
that prestige that goes along with it. And so the divide is continuing to get bigger, and this is a whole other topic that I want to talk about at a later date. And this whole thing about um, whether or not people should go to college. And I am a big believer that it is not the only route. I'm a big believer in it.
Hmm.
I'm a college dropout who did well for myself. However, I caution that attitude, because one of the drivers about not going to college is, oh, it costs so much money. You know what? I am very concerned about what is going to happen to black and brown folks who take that attitude that I get it. It is a huge financial undertaking. I think we have to look at other ways to get our folks there, because I don't think it's to our advantage to, in any large percentages, make the decision not to go to college. I don't think so. It frightens me. I'll put it that way. And I'm somebody who is a college dropout. So, but more on that later.
Yeah.
Uh, I do want to go back to, though. I heard you say a few things. I heard you say that when you got to SC, your network wasn't black because you had your network from Beverly Hills High. And then what
Yeah.
happens at law school? So you continue to be this guy who is trying to attend the best of the best that you have access
Hmm.
to, and you go to UCLA Law School.
Yeah, yeah, honestly, law school is a different experience, because the law school is, especially on the, I won't even say just the top tier schools, but just all law school in general. Anyone that's been through it, like, they try to break everybody down. Like it's dog eat dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, on the top tier, a lot of these people, and I think this my struggles helped me a little. Well, not to say like I was one of the top students in the school, but in terms of psyche, um,
Mhm.
you have students that have never gotten anything less than an A their entire lives, right?
Wow.
So they're coming into that situation, and there's a curve. Somebody is
Mhm.
gonna somebody is getting somebody, somebody is getting that bad grade. Like it's gonna happen, and the way that people handle that, like it's just amazing to see. Like this, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them in their lives.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was interesting because I got to that. It was 3 years in between undergrad and law school. So I'm sure there were some Beverly Hills kids my age that I knew that went to UCLA probably like right after college,
Right.
right after undergrad, and I didn't have that, so I didn't have my little built-in network. The Black Law Students Association Balsa was like really strong there. We didn't have that, it wasn't like a ton of students, but everybody was kind of networked together. So that was one of my groups, and I would just make friends in class. But I was able to go in and out of any situation. Like I'm
Mhm.
cool with everybody in Balsa.
Mhm.
I got my group that
Mhm.
I remember my first year we would play basketball on Fridays. Some black kids were in it, some weren't. And
Mhm.
then I had just people that would be in my section.
Mhm.
I think I had two other black kids in my section my first year, right? Because they break
Mhm.
you your first year, you kind of stay in the same group going through all the different classes.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just I think I had more of a black experience at UCLA Law than I did at USC, which was interesting. But again,
Wow.
like I was saying before, being all these different places and experiencing all these different levels of things, experiencing failure, experiencing success, being around wealthy people, being around the poorest of the poor, being around middle class, like I've seen it all. So like that stage, I'm just like all that stuff is second nature. I know how to go in and out of any situation. Um,
Mhm.
and law school, while I was there, and this is a common thing, I've always like I got to hustle on the side, right? So
You've always had a hustle on the side,
yeah, so
right?
I because I know that's the only way that for me there was no. I've always had my family's house and stuff that I never wanted to like move back into or
Yeah.
whatever. But in terms of them actually like a job and whatever else to fall back on, I'm always looking at the next deal. So I was my after my first year, the job I have now, I've been working basically. Obviously, I don't have the exact same role, but I've been with the same company since my second year of law school. So I was law school is kind of a blur to me because I was halfway in, halfway out.
Yeah, also though, I have to say again, here comes me bragging, but I remember when you graduated from law school. I
Mm-hmm.
remember law school graduation, and the economy was in the toilet when you
Yeah,
graduated.
yeah,
And so all these large firms weren't hiring. And most of your peers were concerned about were they going to have a job.
yeah,
And because you had always had a hustle on the side, you already knew where you were going. You were going straight into sports. That
yep,
had been your plan, and you were set.
yeah,
So that how shall I say, hustle or grind or struggle mentality really played to your benefit.
yeah, for sure. So that experience was that experience. I was just able to. I've just been able to deal with multiple different things happening in environments and all that stuff
Mhm.
and juggle it. And I've always had that focus on what the next thing is, so that if you have, I think a lot of so I could have gone and worked for the place I worked for out of school. I met them through another out of undergrad. I met them through another business and
Mhm.
became close with them, all that stuff. But from my background, like in my immediate family, I was the first to do a lot of stuff. And you get into law school, you get into a top school in LA, like you're gonna. I was just like, I didn't want to look back and be like, oh, this fickle entertainment industry. I had a chance to go to law school and I missed out on it. So I did what I needed to do to get myself certified in that and have that fallback I can
Mhm.
lean on that for the rest of my life if I ever
Mhm.
needed to. But at the
Mhm.
same time, still building up the deal that I wanted to kind of go after. The other thing I was going to mention about law school, you're talking about diversity and that experience. So my uh, first year, I had a civil procedure professor. I can't remember his name. It's crazy, man. I'm starting to forget people's names and stuff like that. Um, but he was a really nice guy, awesome. And he would say, I take 10 students out. I think it was like once a week or something like that.
Mhm.
Sign up on this list, take you to lunch, let's have a conversation, whatever. So there's 10 of us. Eight of the kids that were, or eight, we're adults at this point. So my fellow classmates were children of lawyers.
Wow.
Okay, so because he was
Wow.
interested in this, he would, and this is just a white guy, like nerdy white dude that
Wow.
just like was cool, cool dude, right? So he goes, how, I'm always curious to ask how many of your parents are attorneys. Eight people raised their hand. The ninth, her parents were both surgeons,
Wow.
and then there was me, right? So like
Wow.
that
Wow.
that's the environment, and this is a public school,
Wow.
it's a UCLA,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
environment that you're, and maybe it just was random that happened to be that day, but that always sticks with me, that I was like the one working class kid out of 10 that he
Mhm.
randomly had come um
Yeah.
to have lunch with him, and eight of them were children of lawyers. So it's just like you kind of like have that built-in foundation for the
Yeah.
life that you're going to lead and all of that stuff. So
Wow. Well, so there in preparing for the show, I always am looking for, different stats and reading different articles related to or adjacent to the subject. So, one of the things I've always been curious about and still can't get my hands on the data is, having had a kid that I was poor because I put her through these,
yep.
elite private schools. Again, once again, this whole thing of, and I was not a poor person. I was a middle class working person, but these schools are extremely cost prohibitive in terms of the tuitions that are required. But again, I was trying to do the same thing that we were just talking about, buying the absolute best education possible or getting the best education possible for your kid that you can get. And so, one of the things I've always been very curious about is, those elite private schools, they produce a lot of stats about the colleges that their kids get into,
Hmm.
the ones that get into the Ivies or the extremely highly selective universities, Columbia's, NYU's, Caltech's, whatever. But what they don't produce is that I'm interested in is those schools also have very small black populations, those elite private schools. And I would really be interested to know what the graduation rate is, especially for black males, because I do think it is a different experience for a black male than a black female in these predominantly white environments. I couldn't find, I have never been able to find anything on this. And it makes me question how good they are, because I would think
Yeah,
they would be
they would
touting
be
it.
touted. Yeah,
Yeah.
they would be touting it if and
Yeah.
and I wonder. So there's, because especially when you get to the university level, you get to graduate school level, there's different categories, right? So there
Mhm.
could be a situation where you've never been around like wealthy, predominantly
Mhm.
white
Mhm.
environments, all of that, right? I
Mhm.
can't say that is the case for me. Like it
Right.
wasn't like going
It's
into
not.
like I didn't feel a certain way at UCLA. I know that there were some black peers that felt a certain way, even though I don't come from wealthy, whatever. It's just because I was used to it. Like it was second nature. And there's some kids that are just I don't know. And then there are like the black kids that their parents were professionals and they've been a certain way their entire life. So like
Mhm.
it would be
Mhm.
interesting to see like by socioeconomic data and like what type of school they went to before,
Mhm.
all of that stuff, like
Yeah.
what the actual impact is. Now imagine if I went from I did my entire trajectory in LA Unified in my neighborhood, and then
Mhm.
somehow I got into the schools that I ended up going to. My feeling and my experience probably would have been way different.
Very
Like maybe
different.
maybe I wouldn't have been prepared for that. Maybe I would have been
Yeah.
alienated. Maybe I would have felt a certain way.
Yeah.
All those things I had experienced, years before. I'd gone
Yeah.
through that already. So I wasn't
Yeah.
feeling a type of way about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the data that I did stumble upon, though, that I found extremely interesting, was that the graduation rate of Black students from your Ivies, your highly selectives, that Black students who get into those schools, they graduate at um, anywhere from a 2% lower to 2% higher rate than their
Mm,
white counterparts, which
mm.
I have to say I was taken aback by that, because I would have thought, oh my God, you go into this environment where, like you say, you don't have experience with this population, you don't have a network within this population. Um, if you are coming from an LA Unified, you damn sure are not prepared.
Yeah.
But the graduation rates are extremely high. And one of the things that was said about that was that these Black kids who are able to get themselves to that place, number one, they've had to prove their brilliance time and again, and their resilience.
Mm.
And so, I certainly can see that. And I certainly can see the pros and cons of, having been at an all white school or predominantly white school versus, having had the comfort of being in your own neighborhood your whole life. And so, I know we got to close the show up, but I guess I would just ask one more thing of you before we close, and that is, what would you do if you had kids? How would
Yeah.
you approach it?
Yeah, I think I mean, my wife is my wife is black and pro. I guess I don't know what. So it would be interesting to see if we have kids where, this conversation takes us. But, her um, I think I our niece, her sister's daughter.
Mhm,
Um, she's a private school kid now, but both of her
mhm,
parents are professional. So it's really going
mhm,
to be. I think we talk about this race thing, but also there's the socioeconomic aspect of it. Like when you were
mhm,
reciting these statistics about these Ivy Leagues and who's doing what, and I'm thinking in my head like just about my experience, for instance,
mhm,
coming from my family, like I wasn't a risk taker, right? Like
mhm,
I would try to
mhm,
chase something, but I always would have the other thing on the same. I was
mhm,
juggling a bunch of things
mhm.
versus like
You didn't
going
have a
all in.
net. Well, first of all, you
Did
didn't have a net.
yes.
So
So
to be a risk taker, you need to feel also that there is a potential net. You had no net.
yeah, so like like I did entrepreneurial studies for undergrad. So my mind in terms of starting businesses has been there. I didn't
Mhm.
start my business until I was 39 years old, right?
Wow.
Like
Mhm,
because I was just like, I got a good job and a check, and like
mhm,
I can't,
mhm,
I can't
mhm.
just
Yeah,
go away and like risk this and do what you get to a certain point and a certain level of comfort. You're just like, okay, well, I'm gonna just keep kind of doing this.
yeah.
Um, so that perspective and mindset will change if your parents are professional, like especially if they're your second, third generation professional.
Mhm. Mhm.
you like your ideas of the world and how they would experience things are going to be different.
Mhm.
And I can't, like just depend. It depends on the neighborhood you live in. It depends on
Mhm.
your socioeconomic background, what type
It
of
depends on
school
the kid
environment.
too.
The
It
the
depends on the
kid
kid.
the kid. I feel like they've done I think my sister-in-law and brother-in-law have done a good job with my niece. She's really well rounded. They found a private school. It's called WNS, where they have like everyone
Mm.
is all their parents are professional, but they have a good group of like black students and that she's friends with, and that's their experience. So
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
there are places out there, but it's just tough, and it's you have to, you talked about you struggling to pay pay Tiffany's private school education
Mhm.
like bills so that you can make sure she had access to those things. So that's the thing you have to weigh too. Like, does it
Mhm.
make sense for me to do all of
Mhm.
this? So
Mhm.
there are a lot of factors that would go into it. I would hope that I'd be in a position to be able to send my child to a place wherever it makes the most sense, weighing all those factors. But sometimes you don't really have a choice in the matter.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I might be like, Wendy, I guess you're going to get a job because my wife is teaching now, and I like,
Mhm.
guess you're going to get a job at Beverly Hills schools. That's what we're doing because this I hear the
Yeah.
tuition bills. You're talking about 30 plus $1,000 a year for a 9-year-old, man. That's whew, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. But
Right?
these are the decisions that you have to make. And at least you're in a position to where you can't, that is like a choice for you, right? Where
Yeah.
some parents, they know
Oh,
like
absolutely.
the neighborhood I'm in and where my kids can go to school, like I don't really like I'm putting them in a tough position from the jump. And I'm
Right.
sure that's a tough pill to swallow for parents, that they want to see their kids level up and be in a better position than they were in, especially if you're, not doing as well as you would hope that you'd be able to do in life for a variety of different reasons. Like that has to be so frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah.
The meritocracy aspect of it, like you don't know like it's easy to say like these situations are meritocracies, and they're not always, because
No.
you don't know what you don't know. you don't
Exactly.
you don't
Exactly.
experience you don't know how to handle what you haven't been able to experience or you haven't been around.
What
And
you haven't been exposed to.
I'm proof positive of that. Like I said, it was a
Yeah.
struggle for me till from middle of sixth grade all the way through the end of my sophomore year of high
Yeah.
school. I
Yeah.
wasn't performing at the level that I could have. I had moments, but
Yeah.
in terms of that stride of like, oh, I can go into any room. I know I'm smart. I know I'm this. I
Yeah.
know I'm that. Like, it took me that many years to get that confidence back to
Yeah.
that place.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I always like to end the show with a little wisdom and what we learned today. And you know, for me, from a wisdom perspective, I would say that what I am 100% sure of is that all of our children are not being given the same opportunity. And that it really should not be a question of, do you go to a school that is predominantly white or predominantly comprised of wealthy people in order for you to get a good education? And so, until we can get there, this is going to continue to be a question or a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem. So that's the wisdom that I have, is that, God, please, help us figure out how to get to a place where all of our kids are given the same opportunity. I think what you echoed a lot of my own feelings today when you talked about going into an environment where uh, you didn't know, this was not a group of people you were familiar with, having to overcome the challenges of different socioeconomic, different religion, um, all those differences, but how well that prepared you for a living. And I would say that works both ways. That you helped those people who you came into contact with, who didn't know a black kid who lived in mid city LA, uh, know that you were in many ways just like them, wanting to do better, wanting to play and have a good time, wanting to be smart, and wanting to be successful. And so it is beneficial both ways. I also, I gotta say this because, like I say, I hear parents constantly struggling with, oh, my kid is not picking someone who looks like them or looks like me. It's not rejection. It is, that's the pool they're in. Uh, they are being sort of taught a standard of beauty. I don't agree with some of those standards of beauty. I would tell you, you need to find other ways to make sure that your kid is exposed to a lot of diversity and understands that beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, packages, colors. Like you said, you had church, you had your neighborhood, there were organizations, Jack and Jill, variety of different ways to make those things happen. Um, I also heard you say that being in these diverse environments help you to build networks and to be able to walk into rooms and understand other people's cultures, um, the way different people operate, and to be comfortable. And again, I would say that needs to go both ways, right? Um, yeah. Anything I missed? Anything
Yeah,
you would add?
I think you hit the nail on the head on all of that. And like I wouldn't change anything about my path and the experience I had. I think for me it was the best thing that could happen. I get sad because I see the divisiveness that especially in online cultures that or online spaces that happens where everyone's gets super tribal and
Mm-hmm.
they're always looking for something that someone wronged them with. And I'm not talking
Mm-hmm.
about any particular race, but this is just
Mm-hmm.
race, religion, whatever. Everyone is looking for these reasons to be mad at each other. And I often feel like a weirdo because just with my experiences, like I don't walk around feeling like that at all. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird
Mm-hmm.
place to be in where I feel like I can walk in any room, experience anything, handle myself, connect with anyone.
All right. I love you, honey. Thank you so
Love
much for
you.
coming on with me. This was fantastic. And I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for
Take
having me
care.
on.
All right.